Number 10. The Maker. The Maker is one of the creepiest villains out there, but at the same time, he also seems like one of the saddest as well, at least at the beginning of Ultimate Invasion. And honestly, there are undertones of that throughout, I would say, the Ultimate continuity for him. Who is the Maker? He's the version of Reed Richards who we normally know as Mr. Fantastic, who hails from the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate or Ultimates reality. What makes him so scary? Perhaps the realization that Reed potentially makes an even more formidable villain than he does a hero. He's like Reed without the moral code. I mean, he is Reed without the moral code. That's literally who he is. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe. And make sure you have that bell on so you don't miss out on any of our good old nerdy notifications. Number 9. Reavers. Over the years, the Reavers have become scarier and scarier as a group of villains. Initially, the Reavers were members of the Hellfire Club, in a way belonging to the Hellfire Club's elite team of bodyguards, their own personal militia known as the Hellfire Knight. After being taken by Mojo and repurposed, they were turned into cyborgs, who have become more and more horrific as the years have progressed in terms of their appearance. The Reavers would go on to become affiliated with Spiral, Lady Deathstrike, and of course, Donald Pierce. Initially, they just look like eccentric 80s and 90s villains, but in the modern age, they look more like mad science experiments gone wrong, with the weapons that they wield becoming integrated with their own bodies, a part of that. Before, they were some of my favorite comedic relief in terms of comic book villains, and now they're more like nightmare fuel. Number 8. Mistress Death. What is one of the greatest fears that most people have? Death, of course. The end of life and the journey into the unknown. I think we're the most afraid of death because we just don't really know what comes next. It is the end of something, which honestly already tends to scare us humans, just the idea of something ending, but it also represents a massive change for us, moving from the realm of the living to the non-living, and whatever comes after that, if anything does at all. Hence, Mistress Death has to be one of the most terrifying villains we have at Marvel Comics. Now, granted, Mistress Death isn't really a straight up villain. She's less of a villain and more of like a concept. Everything must die, and we've also seen what the world would be like without her doing her job. See Marvel's Cancerverse. Yeah, not so pretty. But at the same time, the idea of death still scares us, and although she isn't really taking life maliciously, it's easy to see her as a villain when she preys on the fears of so many in the Marvel multiverse, and the fears of us as readers in the real world too.
Number 7. Mephisto. Within the Marvel universe, Mephisto is, for all intents and purposes, the devil. He isn't actually. Technically, he is a demonic hell lord who rules over his own hell-like dimension and enjoys stealing people's souls by tricking them, and he does that by pretending he is the actual devil, playing on people's fears, so basically he's the devil. While Mephisto is within his dimension, which he calls hell, he is immortal, omniscient, and impossible to destroy. It's only when he ventures into other realms that he can be defeated, but doing so just kind of returns him back to his own dimension. He has been a major player in the Marvel universe since his creation and has been either a key or supporting player for many major events. He was the snake in the old Adam and Eve story. He was directly responsible for the creation of Ghost Rider. He's infamously erased the history of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage in order to save Aunt May's life. I mean, he even popped up a hotel out of the ground in Las Vegas that manipulated the citizens and let him take their souls. He has been defeated and outmaneuvered multiple times, but he has never permanently been stopped. Number 6. The Phoenix Force. Now, it's important to say the Phoenix Force is not a villain, technically. It is a cosmic entity representing all life in the Omniverse. The Phoenix Force will exist as long as there is, was, or will be life. If the Phoenix Force were to be destroyed, if that were even possible, all life would follow after it, as well as the ability for life to have begun in the first place. The Phoenix Force is just a force of nature, but it has been used as a darker force of power in the past. For example, when it inhabited Jean Grey during the Dark Phoenix saga. It was at this time the entity was a villain, using Jean's insane levels of psychic power, which it then amplified to godlike levels. With this entity inhabiting her body, Jean and the Phoenix destroyed an entire solar system and attacked her fellow X-Men. Jean had to actually bring her own end just to stop what was happening, and when the Phoenix regained its memories of all the evil it had done, it brought Jean back to life to help make things a little better. And that's not the only time. There was the whole X-Men versus Avengers thing, and there was that time that Thane, Thanos' son, had the Phoenix Force. Almost every time the power of the Phoenix Force comes up, it usually corrupts its bearer and makes like a big stink. Like a huge stink. Big old fart. Number 5. Dormammu. Most fans of Doctor Strange know Dormammu. This being composed of pure magic energy rules the dark dimension and spends most of his time taking over other realities as he finds them. He's essentially immortal and capable of wielding godly power over magic, the dead, souls, and pretty much anything, really. When he is in our reality, he can be thwarted and returned to his own, usually by the Sorcerer Supreme, but within the dark dimension, he reigns supreme and cannot be taken down, like, at all. Using his vast magical abilities and the influence of his power, he is constantly trying to invade our reality, and even when he is banished back or he is stopped, he always comes back eventually, and he has been doing this for millennia. Number 4. The Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix Force. And also a lot like the Phoenix Force, Beyonder is basically like a baby in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth in the Marvel Universe and the various races, he gets a little curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil and conflict, and to that purpose he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars. Now, he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth, so that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal, but that has been retconned recently. And he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and then grant himself any power he wants. It was actually a huge treat though last year in the Defenders Beyond story when we learned that the Beyonder and his race were actually still in existence, and he was now an adult existing with the rest of the adult Beyonders outside of the multiverse and being all levels of wildly insanely powerful. There's a lot I skimmed over here to make it less confusing, but you should just go read all the Secret Wars if you want to see how crazy these beings actually are. Number 3. Cyttorak. Cyttorak, also known as the Destroyer, is an incredibly powerful extra-dimensional being who was worshipped as a god and as a demon by the primitive humans of Earth until he was banished back to the Crimson Cosmos, which is where he comes from. Now, as the Destroyer, Cyttorak's main goal is to just cause destruction and raise destructive power. Simple as that. To do this though, from the Crimson Cosmos, and also to win a wager with 8 other godlike deities like himself, he created the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak, which allows him to select a person to be his avatar, enhancing them to become the indestructible and immortal Juggernaut, which kinda gives us 2 different versions of Unstoppable all wrapped up into one package. You're welcome. Merry Christmas. That's for you. As the Juggernaut is essentially a physically unstoppable force of kinetic energy, unless you're the Hulk, I guess, then you can stop him. I don't know why. Anyways, Cyttorak is such a powerful and unstoppable godlike entity that you will even hear magic users invoking his name to cast some of their strongest spells. For example, the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. Number 2. The Chaos King. While he is relatively obscure, he is nothing to scoff at. Amatsu Mikobashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, was mistaken as the Japanese god of chaos and evil, but in actuality, he was an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Now, Mikobashi ruled and thrived over the Earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness. And as such, his goal now is to put an end to creation and bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, which is the Shinto underworld, which is where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, which is Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now, during the events of Ares, god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon of gods, and after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kind of kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the Dream Dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away. And he releases the souls of the damned. He did all that. He has the power to defeat Eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, Hercules had to literally punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he destroyed 98.76% of the entire universe. That's a lot.
that.
Number 1. Chthon. Chthon is one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. Even though he predates anything like this, of all the devil-like demons out there, including Mephisto, Chthon is the closest thing to the actual devil. He and his Ngari actually ruled the earth before the angel Lucifer attacked them, and that was before Lucifer ever rebelled against heaven and became the actual devil. Chthon himself is responsible for all the witches, werewolves, vampires, and other dark creatures, as well as being the master of the most powerful form of magic, chaos magic, which is the same stuff used by the Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch has altered all of reality with just a fraction of that magic, so yeah, it's a lot. His opposite, Oshter, is one of the 3 beings that make up the Vishanti, and they stand in direct opposition to Chthon specifically, creating the Book of Vishanti in response to Chthon's Darkhold. Other demons and dark sorcerers, including Dormammu and Mephisto, call on Chthon's name to cast some of their strongest spells, and the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, was almost corrupted and permanently taken out by Chthon's mere presence alone. He is extremely hard to bring down, and even if you manage to do so, it's only a matter of time until he comes back.
Number 10. Cordyceps Jones. Cordyceps Jones is one of my favorites of the cosmic villains mentioned on this list. He is definitely a super weirdo. Basically a mushroomy looking space mobster who is made up of fungal spores. While he might sound ridiculous, he is not a villain that you want to underestimate, trust me. He both looks and is terrifying. Most recently using one of his casinos to threaten the existence of the entire planet of Earth by creating a betting pool based around its destruction. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. The Brood. Despite being a bunch of insectoid alien critters, the Brood are actually among one of the most normal of the weirdos on our list. They kinda resemble the monstrous species we see in Alien, and likewise, they are usually known for bursting through people's stomachs. The Brood also seek out hosts to incubate their young, which then of course burst out of the host's bodies to be born. Pretty much just like we see happen in Alien. Something interesting and bizarre that we know about the Brood too is that they don't just do this for survival's sake because, you know, it's required for them to continue to exist as a species. They actually enjoy terrorizing others throughout the cosmos. Inflicting pain and causing panic is something pretty much all Brood enjoy, giving them actual gratification from the violent acts that they commit. In fact, in their race, it's actually weird to feel a sense of empathy or compassion for others and to not enjoy pain, which is why Brew was ostracized and left to die by the Brood Queen, before he was then found and taken in by the X-Men. And weirdly, in his case, the ability to be friendly and kind is actually like his mutant power as a Brood, because, I mean, that is a mutation. Number 8. The Phalanx. Phalanx are some of the most freaky of the villainous cosmic alien races we have over at Marvel Comics. They are believed to have been created by the Technarchy, but I don't think they have actually been made aware of this connection, probably because the Technarchy doesn't want them to know that. Like the Borg, who likely inspired them, they are a cybernetic race focused on assimilating other worlds. They don't take you to a cube to experiment on you though, but instead infect you with the techno-organic virus, which then slowly changes you into a cyborg, erasing everything within you that is organic and turning you techno-organic, some might say.
Number 7. Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous iteration of the cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. He is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Skrull Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth on so many different occasions. And I guess he's tried to devour other planets too, for that matter, but you know, like whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds though, such as Silver Surfer, the Fallen One, and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, to name a few. And while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't actually hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus' power depends on his planet's consumption. So a weakened Galactus who hasn't eaten a planet has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets, he's pretty much unstoppable and has been able to defeat multiple mad Celestials by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can understand that. Number 6. The One Below All. In Marvel Comics, there is a character called the One Above All, who hasn't really been seen all too often, but is essentially essentially the equivalent to God or the creator. We have gods like Odin and Zeus and Thor in Marvel Comics and the MCU, but this is a little bit different. The one above all is like the god of everything, the supreme ruler of creation and compassion. It's even been represented as the writers of Marvel at one point, to give you an idea. So, the one below all, as you can imagine, is the antithesis to this, the personification of destruction and hate. Another way of looking at it is that the one below all is actually the one above all's hulked out form, although that makes things a little bit more complex in some ways. The one below all is trapped in the below place and manifests itself in reality through gamma and gamma mutates. Basically, this means that Hulk and the other gamma mutated beings have fractions of the one below all's power and can be taken over by the one below all for him to try and escape and destroy literally everything. In an alternate future, the one below all actually does this, taking over Bruce Banner's body and using his power to devour the cosmic entity Eternity and eradicate all life in not only this version of the cosmos, but even going into the next iteration of the multiverse, ensuring that nothing in the universe will ever continue to be. Luckily, this is prevented in the Immortal Hulk story, but I'm telling you, go read it. Number 5, the Black Winter. You know, Galactus made this list, but why choose him when we can choose the bigger version of Galactus? Where Galactus consumes individual planets, the Black Winter devours entire realities. The Black Winter, the Star Plague, the Blightstorm, the Rot Blizzard, or the Fimbulwinter if you want, was the one who brought the end of the 6th iteration of the universe, leaving only Galen of the planet Ta, like we talked about before. When the Black Winter arrives in the Marvel Universe, this iteration of it, in the latest run of Thor, Galactus turns an All-Father Thor who possesses the Thor Force into his Herald of Thunder, granting him the power cosmic, and an attack from this Thor only stops the Black Winter for a total of 14 seconds. That's how powerful this multiversal entity is. Luckily, at this time, the Black Winter isn't here to destroy the universe. He is just here for his herald, Galactus. But luckily, Thor turns Galactus into a massive power cosmic explosion that destroys the Black Winter in his entirety, and it's incredibly awesome. Number 4, Thanos. Thanos, who made his debut in Iron Man number 55, February of 1973, has only one goal, and that goal is to conquer the galaxy. Sort of. If you are only familiar with his movie adaptation, then you may not know that comics Thanos is not really much of an altruistic dude. The Mad Titan doesn't seek to eliminate half of life in the known universe in order to create a better one, he simply wanted to impress a girl, but not in the same way you might think. Thanos has a thing for death. In fact, he fell in love with the Mistress Death, who is the physical embodiment of death in Marvel Comics. To prove his love to her, he was going to destroy all the life in the universe, and that's what led to him assembling the Infinity Stones and trying to wield the Cosmic Cube. He's really just a cosmic level serial unaliver. Thanos was born on Titan, a moon of Saturn, and is technically an Eternal, but he possessed a deviant gene which made him very different looking. He was bullied for this as a child, and as such, Thanos distances himself from the society, and he even starts dissecting animals. He has gone far in his obsession with Mistress Death, kidnapping his own mother and taking her apart, training his daughter to become an assassin, and even sending a targeted nuclear strike at his own homeworld. He has the power of telekinesis and matter manipulation, has superhuman intellect, can master any technology, time travel, teleport, and is an incredibly powerful and scary dude. Number 3, the Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix. And a lot like the Phoenix, Beyonder is basically like a baby, in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders, that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth and the Marvel Universe and the various races, he grows curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil, and conflict, and to that purpose he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars, the very first one. Now he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth, so that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal himself, and he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and grant himself any power he wants. It is more nuanced, but it's incredibly difficult to explain, and I don't have that much time, so we're moving on. Number 2, Dormammu. Dormammu is one of a race of extra-dimensional energy beings called the Faltine. Him and his sister Umar are both mutants of the species who seek to consume matter instead of energy, which is a big no-no among the Faltine, and along with taking out their own pops, it caused them to be banished. They both traveled to the Dark Dimension, and eventually Dormammu took it over. Dormammu is the prime enemy of the Vishanti, the gods who give the Sorcerer Supreme his supreme merch, and is stated by Odin to be his equal in power. He is more powerful than even the greatest sorcerers, including Doctor Strange and the Ancient One, and he can banish anyone from his domain, the Dark Dimension, but usually fights them for a bit of the old sport. He also has super strength, astral projection, matter transmutation, interdimensional teleportation, flight, can change his appearance and size, can control the elements, time travel, and project and absorb energy. He's also immortal, if that mattered, and has a regenerative healing factor, which seems kinda useless if you're immortal, but hey, I just work here. And finally, in at number 1 is Shuma Gorath. Shuma Gorath is one of the greatest of the leaders of the Old Ones, also known as the Many-Angled Ones. Think like Lovecraftian old gods, and that's basically the Old Ones, so cosmic horror, tentacles, and madness, all that good stuff. Shuma Gorath is the ruler of hundreds of dimensions and is said to be older than the universe itself. It has many mystical powers, including the ability to communicate and control others across dimensions, create mystical energy blasts from his eye and tentacles, and can transmute things on a planetary scale. He can destroy multiple galaxies with his aura pressure ability, and can destroy realities by using his tentacles to create a ball of energy that he just launches at entire realities. I don't even know how that makes sense. They first fully premiered in Marvel Premiere Volume 1, number 10, and in the comic, Shuma Gorath ends up using the mind of the Ancient One, Doctor Strange's mentor, as a portal to the dimension of Earth. Doctor Strange goes into the Ancient One's mind to battle the defenses of Shuma Gorath and fight his way into its realm, only to realize that the only way to win and to defeat Shuma Gorath is to actually take out the Ancient One himself. He's forced to do it, and it leads to him becoming the Sorcerer Supreme for the very first time.
Number 10, the Kingpin. The way that the Ultimate Universe handles Wilson Fisk is pretty close to how he is in the main 616 universe. He is a kingpin of crime who uses fear and money to avoid the consequences of his criminal actions. His activities are an open secret, but no one can get enough evidence together to actually stop him. Sure, he loses some fights over the course of his time in the comics, but he is unstoppable in a much more realistic and kind of depressing way because of the corruption that he has sown into the city. After obtaining a magical Egyptian relic known as the Zodiac Key, he found that without even having to use the item, it caused enough fear that he could run the city's crime almost unopposed. In a move that is an undeniable win on Fisk's part, he bought the merchandise rights to Spider-Man's likeness, meaning that he was making massive amounts of money off of his enemy. He was eventually arrested after trying to have the Ultimate Moon Knight killed, but when the ultimatum wave washed away much of New York, all of the records of his crime were destroyed in the disaster, and he was able to go free. He was permanently stopped when he was thrown out of a window by Mysterio, though. Number 9, Sabretooth. Earth 1610's Victor Creed is quite similar to the original version, with him being a bit of a psycho with claws, heightened senses, and a healing factor. He believed that humans were more cruel than less evolved animals, and therefore, mutants should be even worse. He became a ruthless killer who delighted in causing his victims as much pain as possible before he was eventually recruited to the Weapon X program. After Wolverine left the program, Sabretooth was given similar, though more extensive, adamantium upgrades, and he was sent to retrieve Wolverine. From that point on in his history, Sabretooth came into frequent conflict with the X-Men, the Ultimates, and various random heroes of the Ultimate Universe. He soon joined the ultimate version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the Brotherhood of Mutant Superiority, being a consistent thorn in Wolverine's side. Sabretooth makes this list despite the fact that he is frequently apprehended or defeated because of his incredible healing factor. He has been shot, stabbed, and even decapitated, and yet he always comes back. So, though he can be defeated, he can only ever be stopped on a temporary basis. Number 8, Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock's origin is pretty much the same as his original. He gets in a lab accident that makes him able to control his metal arms telepathically, and he uses those arms to do crime. However, he is different from the classic Ock in a few ways. This version of Octavius is so linked to his arms that he can control them even when he is separated from them, such as in Ultimate Spider-Man number 54, when he summoned his his arms with his mind and used them to escape prison. After Spider-Man defeated him again, Nick Fury had Ock's arms destroyed in molten steel, thinking that would stop Ock once and for all. But we found out that there was another difference between this Ock and the original. He was actually a mutant, with powers similar to Magneto's. He hadn't been controlling the arms, he had been controlling the metal in the arms. He then used this mutant ability to cause metal in the building to form together new arms for himself, and he fought Spider-Man and Spider-Woman in a cyclone of flying shards of metal. So, while the old Ock could be stopped by removing his arms, this Ock has way more ways to come back from a loss, and can't be stopped for long. That is, until Green Goblin beat him to death. But hey, that's why he's so low on the list.
Number 7. Three Mothers. Death of Doctor Strange is an overarching story and miniseries that really has it all. It has drama, mystery, romance, heartbreak, and of course, lots of horrifying moments to just round it all out. The story delivers on what the title promises, the death of Doctor Strange. After his death, it is revealed Strange had some fail-safes in place to help him actually solve his own murder. A past version of Strange appears and ends up hot on the trail of solving his own murder with the help of magical allies such as Wong and Clea. We're also introduced to the Three Mothers, villains who live to feed another possibly even more terrifying entity who's actually their own master, known as the Peregrine Child. Number 6. Chthon. Doctor Strange is one of the few who is strong enough to actually fight against Chthon. For those who are not familiar, Chthon is often attached to Scarlet Witch in Marvel Comics and is a demonic elder god, one of the oldest entities in the Marvel Universe. He is the one who is often believed to have granted Scarlet Witch her chaos magic abilities and has been known from time to time to possess Wanda as such, using her as his host. Doctor Strange is an immensely powerful magic user and is actually one of the few who can resist Chthon's influence and avoid becoming Chthon's mindless puppet. Strange has fought against Chthon many times, including when Scarlet Witch was possessed by Chthon during Secret Empire, with Strange being the one to actually free Wanda from Chthon's influence. Number 5. Nightmare. Nightmare is one of Doctor Strange's first ever villains. In fact, the first ever Doctor Strange villain in terms of comic book appearances. Nightmare made his first appearance alongside Doctor Strange, who also made his debut appearance in issue 110 of Strange Tales, released back in April of 1963. What makes Nightmare a villain to be feared? He plagues his victims using nightmares, reveling and finding power in their fear. Nightmare has been known in the comics for palling around in the past with the equally, if not more terrifying, baddie, Shuma-Gorath. Nightmare is also in essence immortal. As long as people dream, he will continue to exist. He is the ruler of the Nightmare Dimension, one of the splinter realms of the Dream Dimension, and is actually considered to be the most powerful of the Splinter Realms rulers. Number 4. Shuma-Gorath. Shuma-Gorath is one of the Great Old Ones, and many angled ones, basically a Marvel version of an Elder God. Like Dormammu, he is also known to be one of the Lords of Chaos, although it's been kinda unclear throughout the comic lore as to whether there truly are multiple of those, or just one Lord of Chaos, who kinda like continues to be renamed throughout history. The many angled ones are known for being one of the oldest kinds of entities in the Marvel Universe. Shuma-Gorath has returned to Earth many times and set up as a god there, being worshipped even on Earth before the sinking of Atlantis, where he demanded blood sacrifices. That's how you know he's evil and he's scary. Number 3. Umar. Umar is the sister of Dormammu. She is known as a powerful sorceress and villain who sometimes works alongside her brother when she's not busy devising her own devious plots, which sometimes involve basically getting back at her brother for something. While many people think of Dormammu as being the more terrifying of the two of these beings, Umar was actually also very active in helping to conquer the Dark Dimension. In fact, she may have even ended up the ruler of the Dark Dimension in Dormammu's place if she hadn't been exhausted due to dealing with the mindless ones. Umar is just as terrifying, if not at times I would say more so, than her brother. Number 2. Death. Death has to be one of the most frightening villains that Doctor Strange has fought against. Although sometimes Death isn't really a villain and is more like a neutral being. But I do also mean literally fought against, if you're wondering. I don't just mean like, oh, when Doctor Strange had to face Death. No, I mean literally fought. When most people think death in regards to the Marvel Universe, they think of Mistress Death, the pretty woman that embodies the concept whom Thanos is in love with and whom in the comics he destroyed half of all life in the cosmos in an attempt to impress. However, death can take many different forms, and in Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme issue number 55, Death is a creepy looking skeleton instead, who comes to claim Strange, threatening to take Strange back to its realm after claiming Strange's life. Here, Death torments Strange, trying to sort of basically get him to lose his willpower here and cave in, give up, as the issue's main antagonist by making him relive the loss of his family, with him re-experiencing the loss of his sister, his brother, and his parents. Yeah, if you didn't know, Strange has siblings, he's lost them, and he's lost a lot of people. Strange actually has a really tragic life. We should do a top 10 worst things that have happened to Doctor Strange if we haven't already. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto is often thought of as the devil of Marvel. He rules over his own hellish dimension and is known for making lots of contracts with heroes that usually result in them being very unhappy in the end, despite getting what they wanted, much like the devil in various tales and lore. He's not someone you wanna make a bargain with, as typically there are conditions, which means that Mephisto often comes out on top in the end, even though, he gave you what you wanted. Mephisto is both demonic and magical in terms of his origin and classification in Marvel's various realms of categories for characters. And if he plays his cards right, he can even use his powers to warp the reality of the universe, which we've actually seen him successfully do a few different times. Unlike most other characters in Marvel Comics, Mephisto is one of the rare few who have actually had success with making his changes to reality permanent. Mephisto is also a formidable foe in one-on-one combat, being that he is also super strong, durable, fast, and virtually immortal. Trust me, you wouldn't want to dance with this devil in the pale moonlight.
Starting off at number 10 today is Null. Null is the literal eldritch god of all symbiotes, their creator. Null existed before the current version of the universe ever even came be, in the black void of nothingness. One of his very first acts after he was awoken by the light created by the formation of the universe was creating the all-black Necrosword. This was the very first symbiote and it was immensely powerful. Using it, Null was able to slice the head clean off of a celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to a void where he worked more and more on the sword, and eventually he broke free and went out into the universe with the intent of wiping out various different gods until he was defeated and he lost the sword to Gore the God Butcher. And if we want to talk about villains who should have been more powerful in the MCU, he's top of the list. Null then goes on to make more and more symbiotes all share a hive mind under the control of Null. They eventually rebel and imprison Null inside the symbiote homeworld Clintar, which is actually symbiote for Cage. He's one of the strongest villains Marvel Comics has shown us. He faced off against all the Earth's heroes and nearly won. He has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unipower, aka Captain Universe, the protector of the universe and the opposite to everything that Null represents. Number 9. Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity known as Eternity. This essentially means his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that very reason. And funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is also tied to the incredibly unstoppable cosmic entity Galactus. Whenever Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus was actually destroyed in a story called Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas was released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain would be. So, the question of how he was defeated is kind of important. In Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful tool called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying the Earth. Reed Richards ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. Abraxas is so unstoppable that that we essentially needed a deus ex machina to defeat him. Number 8. The Chaos King. Amatsu Mikubashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, is the Japanese god chaos, evil, and an aspect of the cosmic being known as Oblivion. Mikubashi ruled and thrived over the earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness, and as such, his goal now is to bring it back to that age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, the Shinto underworld, where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, Shinma demons, and other monsters. During the events of Ares' god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he had defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, and gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the Dream Dimension, destroys Mephisto somehow, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away, and releases the souls of the damned. He has the power to defeat Eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of someone like Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor teamed up together but could not defeat Chaos King. To win, this insanely powerful god of gods, Hercules had to punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he had already destroyed about 98% of the universe.
Number 7. Malice. When it comes to Malice, I think the reason why she scares me so much is my fear of possession. I just think of Malice taking over people's bodies, making heroes perform as they normally would not, and I'm honestly terrified of that. Malice has been a few different people in the comics, and I'm not sure if we've ever really clarified if they were the same entity or not as some of the other Malices that we've had. There is Malice as in Alice McAllister, who can exist as a purely psionic being and has done so in the past, possessing various X-Men members such as Lorna Dane, Psylocke, and even Storm for a time. And there is Malice as in the darker persona of Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman, which takes control of the Invisible Woman and who apparently was made manifest during the Psycho Man's attack on New York. Pretty sure these are two separate entities, but I think it's also really interesting that they both kind of like possess people and they're also both named Malice, so I just decided to include them together because you never know. You never know. Those could be connected at some point. Number 6. Dormammu. When it comes to ghoulies that exist less in the physical world and more in other dimensions, Dormammu is one of the folks who really reigns supreme. Why is Dormammu one of the most horrifying villains Marvel has to offer? Probably because he's just so darn powerful. Also, we don't call him the Dread Dormammu, the Dread Lord Dormammu, for nothing. He rules the Dark Dimension, which he conquered, and he isn't afraid to mess you up in honestly really terrible ways. I feel like being killed by Dormammu or his forces would actually be a mercy, considering all the terrible ways I've seen him torment his foes, both in the comics and honestly outside of them as well. Number 5. Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova just creeps me out, even just to look at her. Often the way she is drawn is what disturbs me the most, but at the same time, she is drawn in a way that makes sense when you consider just how terrifying she is from a power set standpoint and in regards to how twisted her mind is. I feel like we draw her like how she is on the inside. She's like really creepy on the outside, and it's representing what she got going inside, you know what I mean? Which is really creepy and really gross. Cassandra Nova doesn't often think twice when it comes to pulling off unspeakable acts of horror. She will turn you inside out if she feels she needs to, or simply just if she wants to. And honestly, she can do that. At least from a psionic standpoint, and maybe even from a physical standpoint too. There's a few things that have happened, not quite sure what happened with her, but I was creepy and I don't want it to happen to me, I'll tell you that much. Cassandra Nova is one of the most powerful telepaths and psionic characters we have in Marvel Comics, and she just so happens to be a villain, usually, who until recently didn't even possess a sense of empathy. So, this has led her to slaughter millions without even batting an eye. In fact, she's probably less likely to blink and more likely to stare intently while she does this, as she laughs maniacally afterward. Number 4. Galactus. Have you seen Galactus? I don't think I need to justify why he's so scary. So instead, I'm just gonna talk a bit about the time that he took on Dazzler as one of his heralds. This was also a pretty scary time for me as a reader, because during that whole issue, during that whole story, I was wondering if Dazzler would ever get to go back home to Earth to continue to pursue her career as a singer. Seriously, when Dazzler goes on these wacky adventures in the comics, I'm always left worrying about if she's missing singing gigs back home. Like, I'm like, is there a concert going on right now? Like, will she ever recover her career? No, but in all seriousness, Galactus is scary not just because he is gigantic, though honestly there is also that pretty terrifying, especially scary for those who have megalophobia, a fear of gigantic things. He's also scary because in many ways he is inevitable. Although I believe Galactus is still currently deceased in the comics, it has been implied and stated on multiple occasions in the past that his existence is necessary for the cosmos to be in balance and continue on forward, implying that even when he's gone, we have to deal with the fear of what might happen to the universe and even perhaps the multiverse in his absence, which is now. Number 3. Tarn the Uncaring. Just thinking about Tarn sends shivers down my spine. Tarn is or was one of the Iraqi mutants. He was kinda like the Araco version of Krakoa's Mr. Sinister, except that Tarn is an Omega level mutant who also has magic based powers as well. Tarn's powers are mainly psionic in nature, granting him the ability to read minds while also causing immense pain to his target. Not only is he telepathic, but he's also an immensely powerful telekinetic as well. Like Mr. Sinister, he is obsessed with evolution and genes and is capable of altering the genetic makeup of other mutants, even taking their powers away or simply malforming them to the point that they can no longer function. The Locust Vile are what Tarn calls his loyal servants, who see him basically as a god. These Iraqi mutants are Tarn's experiments. While most don't survive his experimentation process, the ones who do worship him as their god and join his Locust Vile. Tarn also has the ability to teleport too, so he could just like pop up beside you and then literally turn you into a pile of painful goo. Pretty scary stuff. Number 2. Null. Null is basically the biggest, baddest symbiote around. Yeah, you thought Venom was scary? You thought Carnage was scary? Well, I mean, you're right. Both of those symbiotic characters are pretty scary. But without Null, neither would even exist, so think about that. Null is the god of symbiotes and also wields a symbiotic army complete with symbiotic dragons as well. I mean, yeah. Number 1. The Many-Angled Ones, aka Marvel's version of the Elder Gods. Or at least one of their versions, I would say. What could be scarier in any reality, honestly? Yep, Marvel also has their own Elder Gods who have been known sometimes as the Many-Angled Ones. What do the Many-Angled Ones get up to? Well, when they invade the reality known as Earth 10011, they warp it into something horrifically twisted. After they have influenced and invaded this reality successfully, death is eliminated and life runs rampant and unchecked, with many prominent figures in this reality pledging themselves to the Many-Angled Ones. And if you think that eliminating death would be a good thing, just check out this universe. We'd come to know this reality as the Cancerverse. For a while, the Many-Angled Ones and the Cancerverse actually threatened the entire multiverse, attempting at first to invade Earth 616, which is our main comic book continuity. Fortunately, they did not succeed in their attempt, but if they had, that should be like a what if issue. What if they did that? Does that exist? If it exists, let me know what issue it is so I can look it up and read it.
Number 10. Dr. Doom. Some of you are already typing your comments claiming that Victor Von Doom is not a villain and is instead an anti-hero. I would disagree, saying that he's at best an anti-villain, but honestly, if I didn't include him, I'd be getting just as many comments complaining about his exclusion, so let's put him at the bottom and agree that Dr. Doom started out as a villain and has become more nuanced and difficult to peg down in the years since. Victor Von Doom was the child of Romani people living in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress, and after her and his father's passing, Victor began to study her books, teaching himself the dark arts. He also developed a keen scientific mind, which made him a legendary scientist and inventor at a very young age, and led to him being tracked down by the US military and offered further education in the States. It was here that he met Reed Richards, with whom he developed a lifelong rivalry. While still in school, he developed his infamous Doom bots and also built a functional time machine. He was disfigured in an accident that resulted in his expulsion, and he went on to become the leader of some monks who helped him build his iconic armor. He became the main antagonist of the Fantastic Four and the dictator of the country of Latveria, causing lots of problems for the heroes of the Marvel Universe. His status as one of the most brilliant minds on Earth, as well as him being one of the Earth's most powerful sorcerers, combined with his diplomatic immunity, makes him a force to be reckoned with for both the heroes and the villains of the Marvel Universe.
And at number 9 is Sabretooth. Sabretooth is like the darker, bigger, and stronger brother of Wolverine. He isn't actually Wolverine's brother, but the fights between Wolverine and Sabretooth were the absolute most bloody, knockdown, drag-out, legendary fights that go to such drastic extremes, and that's because neither of these guys can really be stopped, since they both possess an absolutely massive, powerful healing factor. They share a lot of qualities, honestly. Sabretooth has adamantium-laced bones and claws, superhuman senses, superhuman attributes, and even psionic resistance presences as well. The thing about Sabretooth is that he is just pure animalistic fury, a mindless killing machine, but one who has the training to make him just that much more of a force to be reckoned with. Even when he is stopped, he's almost never fully destroyed because of that damn healing factor that makes him next to impossible to bring down. Sure, he doesn't warp reality or cross-dimensional barriers, but even when he was thrown into the pit on Krakoa, where he was trapped alive but unable to move, he still proved a problem as he figured out how to escape.
Magneto. When Mac Eisenhart was a young man in Germany, he was subjected to many atrocities at the hands of the Third Reich, who sent him to Auschwitz for no reason other than being Jewish. He eventually escaped and became known as Erich Lenscher. He discovered that he had the ability to control the powers of magnetism, and after the war, used them to track down former German soldiers. He developed the belief that mutants and humanity could not coexist and became Magneto, a mutant dedicated to mutant superiority and the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He fought the X-Men several times over the years, but they eventually came to an uneasy truce, working together to form a refuge for their kind on the island of Krakoa, which is good for everyone as Magneto is a very difficult villain to stop and has stood up to the entire Avengers team, once reversed the Earth's magnetic poles, and also created a global EMP, which took out the world's technology, showing that he could plunge us back to the Dark Ages whenever he wants. Number 7. Venom. Ultimate Venom is not an alien symbiote, but a genetically engineered suit developed by Eddie Brock and Peter Parker's dads. When Peter used the symbiote to get his black suit, Eddie became jealous and fused with a sample of the symbiote that was in storage. This caused him to become Venom. While in Venom form, he has an insatiable hunger and has to consume people at a regular rate in order to not be consumed from within the suit. He has all of the classic Venom's powers, like the strength, the healing, the ability to override Peter's spider sense, but unlike the classic Venom, he doesn't have the same level of weakness to sonics and fire. Electricity is his weakness, but his savagery makes him even more dangerous than the original Venom. He became even more powerful when he absorbed the Carnage symbiote, becoming even bigger and monstrous than before. Number 6. Namor. Namor was introduced in the 610 universe in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 24, when the Four were helping Mary Storm with her discovery of Atlantis, and they found a sarcophagus which contained Namor. The translation of the Atlantean language said that Namor was king of Atlantis before it was destroyed. However, they soon discovered that this Namor was much less noble than his 616 counterpart. A revised translation revealed that he had not been entombed, he had been imprisoned, and that he was not a king, but the most dangerous supercriminal in all of Atlantean history. He tried to seduce Sue Storm, but was rejected. He didn't take this well and went on a rampage. He went toe-to-toe with the Thing, withstood the full force of the Human Torch's power, stretched Mr. Fantastic almost to the breaking point, and smashed through Sue's force fields. He defeated the team and held the city hostage with a tsunami, threatening to destroy the city unless Sue gave him a kiss. She complied and Namor departed. In subsequent appearances, he has been a bit more chill and did lose some fights, but that debut says it all. Number 5. Magneto. Ultimate Magneto has all the powers that the original does, but none of his mercy. He doesn't just view mutants as superior to humans, he views humans as insects. In one of his most amazing moments, he stormed Washington with sentinels that he had reprogrammed and dragged the president naked onto the White House lawn to kill him. The only reason that he was stopped by the X-Men was because his own son, Quicksilver, saw that things had gone too far and betrayed his father, removing his helmet with his super speed. In his biggest plot, he actually proved how much of a nearly unstoppable force he could really be. In Ultimatum, Magneto had been driven mad at the loss of his children, and he decided that rather than destroying humanity in order to make the world safe from mutants, he's just gonna kill everyone. He uses a doomsday device and his powers to shift the world off of its axis, causing disasters all over the globe. Much of Europe, including all of Latveria, is frozen under a layer of ice, and New York is hit by a massive tidal wave. Millions of people all over the world die in the attack. He plans on using the plan again to decimate the rest of the world, but all of the heroes left in the world team up to stop him, and Cyclops ends up killing him. But the fact that he got as far into his plan as he did, and that it took literally every hero in the world working together to stop him, is pretty impressive. Number 4. Apocalypse. So the 1610 version of Apocalypse is one of the most changed versions of a classic villain. This universe's Mr. Sinister was a scientist who had a psychotic break and believed himself to be working at the behest of Apocalypse. He made Mr. Sinister track down and kill several mutants, believing that it would cause his master to manifest on Earth. When he had completed his task, Sinister floated into the air and was transformed into Apocalypse. The X-Men attacked him but didn't count on his ability to take their mutant powers away. He tore off Wolverine's arm and battled both the X-Men and the Morlocks, and used his powers to make the two groups fight each other against their will. He then fought a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and the Fantastic Four, who couldn't hurt him in the slightest. Professor X then attacked with his mental powers, but Apocalypse was somehow able to resist and overpower the Professor. It would have been curtains for Charles, but Jean Grey unleashed the Phoenix Force and destroyed the villain. So, he was able to take on the combined forces of the Morlocks, S.H.I.E.L.D., the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, and the only force powerful enough to cause him any trouble at all was the Phoenix Force, which, by the way, is much less villainous in the Ultimate Universe. Number 3, the Hulk. In the mainline Marvel Universe, the Hulk is a misunderstood creature who will go on rampages, but goes out of his way to protect innocent people, and ultimately does more good than harm. The Ultimate Hulk is a bit different. In this universe, Bruce Banner grew up hating his scrawny body, and was working to develop a new version of the Super Soldier Serum, which he tested on himself, transforming him into the Hulk. This Hulk causes a lot more collateral damage than his 616 version, routinely causing hundreds of deaths when rampaging through cities. He is also known for eating people that he doesn't like. He did a few heroic acts, but on the whole, he has done a lot more harm with his frequent rampages and his eventual team up with the villainous Maker to fight the Ultimates, the 1610 version of the Avengers. Like the classic Hulk, there are very few characters who can stand up to Hulk, and even if they do, his healing factor is so efficient that any injuries will soon be healed. If that wasn't intimidating enough, there was a time where this evil Hulk stole the Infinity Gems and used them to fight the heroes. So Hulk with an Infinity Gauntlet. Yikes. Number 2, the Green Goblin. This is the villain that got one of the biggest makeovers in the Ultimate Universe. Norman Osborn was trying to develop a super soldier serum, which he called the Oz formula. After an Oz-infected spider bit Peter Parker and gave him spider powers, Norman theorized that since the Oz and spider DNA had made Peter the way he was, injecting himself with Oz mixed with his own DNA would turn him into a heightened version of himself. Instead, it turned him into a hideous giant goblin creature. While the 616 goblin has super strength and uses a glider with pumpkin bombs, this goblin had insane super strength as well as fortified tissues that made him very difficult to hurt. He had a powerful healing factor and could launch fiery bolts of energy from his hands. True, Spider-Man would often foil his plans and he was presumed dead several times, but his real ace in the hole is that the Oz formula made him immortal, so he would always return to life. So, even if you could stop him, it would never be long before he returned for revenge. Number 1, the Maker. Reed Richards is often called the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and alongside the Fantastic Four, is one of Earth's greatest heroes. His ego has often led to him making some questionable decisions, but he has been instrumental in saving the Earth from several threats, including Galactus and the Skrull. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, where the combined stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. But Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker, and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power, and used an antimatter attack on Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, showing just how dangerous Reed Richards can be when his massive brain is turned against Marvel's heroes. He is the ultimate threat to the Ultimate Universe, and just as dangerous to the 616 universe.
Coming in at number 10 is Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from though, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look 40 when he's actually 7 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable. What makes him unstoppable is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body when he passed away. Nathaniel, Ramatut, Iron Lad, Kid Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus himself, Mr. Griffin, He Who Remains, whatever you want to call him, Kang the Conqueror is pretty much unstoppable. Number 9. Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. Now when Galactus destroys and consumes a planet, he is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Skrull Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth so many freaking times, and I guess other planets for that matter too, or whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds such as Silver Surfer and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, and so many others, and while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus' power depends on his planet's consumption, so a weakened Galactus has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets or something, he's been able to defeat multiple mad celestials all by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can understand that. Coming in at number 8, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. So, being the opposite of Eternity, his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is tied to Galactus too, because when Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus is taken off the board in Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas is released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain. So, how the heck do the heroes come out on top against this guy? Well, in Fantastic Four number 48 to 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying our Earth. Now the heroes, specifically Reed Richards, ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, destroying reality and remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. That's the route we had to go to here. Kinda makes you wonder why Marvel would even write such a powerful villain in the first place, but
Number 7, Dark Celestials. So weird. Because when you think about it, the Celestials and even the Dark Celestials actually are a big part of the reason that we even have life on Earth in Marvel Comics. In fact, their existence could even be used to explain the sheer number of superpowered beings that are on Earth as well. The Progenitor, who appeared in AXE Judgment Day after being resurrected by the Avengers and Eternals, is actually the first to have become corrupted. Dark Celestials are just Celestials, godlike cosmic beings, who were corrupted by the Horde. The Progenitor did initially not turn dark, but instead died as a result of this, falling to planet Earth billions of years ago. The Celestial who searched for the Progenitor became corrupted by the corpse they found, and then they were turned dark, thereby creating the Dark Celestials, and actually becoming the first Dark Celestial, but not the first person to be infected by the Horde. Number 6, Horde. The Horde are another insectoid alien race that are so cosmic, it actually hurts me. They're basically the race that is meant to cosmically balance out the Celestials. They are agents of the Fulcrum, along with the Celestials and Watchers. And the Fulcrum, for those who are not familiar with this term, basically represents the balance of the cosmos. In essence, Marvel's god. The Fulcrum is actually known by another name that many may more commonly recognize from Marvel Comics, the One Above All. Yeah, so like I said, basically God. The Horde are therefore just made to be a force of destruction to counter the Celestials' force of creation in the universe. Why do they look like insects? Probably because it's just creepier that way. Why did they choose to corrupt the Celestials? Because they could. I'm not really sure how all that factors into Fulcrum's plans, or if it does at all, but it's a thing that happened at least, so hey, there's that. Number 5. Raquel. I never know how to say this name. Raquel isn't a strange cosmic villain in the sense of her appearance or role, but more is mentioned here because she suddenly popped up in the comics after years of being dead, which is what makes her kinda weird. It had been so long that her return was mostly met with confusion from fans at that point because many who were reading her reappearance didn't actually know who the heck she was. Even I had to do some digging to fully understand the importance of just who this character is. Raquel was once one of the rulers of the Skrull Empire. Unlike Varanki, who was made queen after the Skrulls' homeworld fell, and actually who a lot of people thought I think Raquel was at first, Raquel was actually the Skrull Empress, back when the homeworld was still around and doing well. Raquel first appeared back in 1979, and would perish in the comics in issue 257 of Fantastic Four in 1983, only a few short years later. She returned only a few short years ago from now though, so like it's 2023 now. I think she reappeared back in like 2020 or something like that, or 2021, in the Empire event, where she was revealed to be Hulkling's grandmother who survived the destruction of Tarnax 4, and who had been working behind the scenes ever since undercover as a Kree pursuer while putting into motion a plan to make her grandson ruler of the United Skrull and Kree empires. Which is like, what? That was me when I found all that out. Number 4. Annihilus. Annihilus is weird in the most comic book way for a villain. He hails from the Negative Zone and is also insectoid in appearance, like so many others on our list. Annihilus basically has a cosmic magic wand, if you will, known as the Cosmic Control Rod, that he used in his attempt to take over the Negative Zone. In more recent appearances, however, Annihilus actually usually chooses to wear this rod as sort of a protective accessory, using it to protect him against naturally occurring dangers such as aging, heat, and cold, in addition to gaining the ability to fly through space. I mean, at the end of the day, Annihilus is like kind of an insect, so he needs to be protected against those things. He also initially became a villain of the Fantastic Four because they borrowed the Cosmic Rod to help treat the Invisible Woman during her pregnancy. Though admittedly, they did return the Cosmic Rod, so I don't know why Annihilus is so angry. I guess if you need something to live though, you'd be like, hey, don't just take that. Number 3. Galactus. When you think about it, Galactus is a pretty weird villain. He's basically a giant man who can fly through the vacuum of space, although he usually prefers to do so from within his own even more enormous spaceship, because I guess he likes having his things with him, who wears a very large hat, has much hunger, and as a result, basically eats planets. Oh, and he's also basically a universal constant, meaning that without his existence, the universe is kind of thrown off balance. Despite being an antagonist, you also kind of need him to exist, or at least, I mean, you used to need him. I don't really know what's happening with that. Recently, Galactus got dusted in a fight involving the Black Winter and Thor, and the universe still seems to be existing without too much disruption right now. But even that is weird, because if we established how Galactus is basically a necessary evil earlier, you'd think his death would cause things to get pretty wonky pretty quickly. Although, to be fair to Donny Cates' current Thor series, that's likely coming in due time, because it was kind of hinted at that, yeah, killing Galactus may have been a bad move. Number 2. Impossible Man. Impossible Man is one of my all-time favorite weirdos from the cosmic realm of Marvel Comics. He's kind of like Marvel's equivalent of DC's fifth-dimensional imp, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Impossible Man hails from the planet Pop-Up and is known as a Pop-Upian. He is often depicted as being more a misguided villain than a malicious one. For the most part, he gets into trouble with heroes because of a misunderstanding or because of kind of his love for pranking. Like Mr. Mixie, he is sometimes an ally to the heroes who he has also been known to torment, and is known for being pretty intensely powerful, I'd say, having molecular manipulation powers which allow him to change his form, shapeshift, and even duplicate himself. Also, he's got a very goofy design that honestly reminds me of a cross between Mr. Mixie and the Coneheads, and I love it. Number 1. Zemnu. Definitely one of the weirdest weirdos out there for me. Even his name sounds so cosmically weird and fantastic. Zemnu. Reminds me of Xanadu, although not at all related to that 80s Olivia Newton-John fantasy musical classic, to clarify. Sadly, I wish Zemnu was Xanadu themed villain. What would that even be like? I don't know. I'm here for it. Zemnu with like some roller skates on. Zemnu is a Hulk villain. He was an alien cyborg prisoner who escaped from exile only to crash land on Earth. Already that sounds pretty wild. But hey, it gets weirder. Zemnu initially hoped to control the minds of the people of Earth and get them to build him a new spaceship, one that was so powerful that its launch would actually in essence destroy Earth. Zemnu is a psionic being who can hypnotize his victims and control their minds. He can also use hosts to kinda heal himself, in essence transforming their body into his until there's nothing resembling them or their mind left. Even stranger, Zemnu was technically the first character to be known as the Hulk before the creation of the Bruce Banner turned green giant version of the character, which is even weirder to think about. Zemnu's OG Hulk. Number 10. Dormammu. One of the most powerful magical villains in the Marvel Universe is definitely Dormammu, especially if you end up going to the Dark Dimension to face him. Here, Dormammu reigns supreme, and so his power is considered limitless. I don't know about you, but if Dormammu is ruling, I'm pretty much just going to stay out of the Dark Dimension, I think. I think that's a good idea if he's there. At one point, Doctor Strange even ended up as Dormammu's prisoner in the comics, trapped in the Dark Dimension alongside his defenders, and for a surprisingly lengthy period of time too. In fact, Strange almost gave up hope that he'd actually even get out at one point. Dormammu himself is composed of mystical energy. He's basically like a big ball of flaming magic. He's virtually immortal, while in his dimension can manipulate matter as he sees fit, can control the elements, and can change shape and size at will. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Dracula. When we think of scary villains in general, many of us probably normally think of scary monsters that we've seen in movies and read about in iconic literature, like Dracula. Well, Dracula, thanks to Dracula being considered public domain, he also exists in most comic book realities as well, including that of Marvel Comics. And guess what? Doctor Strange has also fought against him. In fact, if it weren't for Doctor Strange, Dracula may have never been defeated. Doctor Strange not only defeated Dracula, but at the same time also successfully defeated all vampires on Earth. It's true. How did he do this? By possessing the knowledge of and utilizing the Montesi formula. This isn't Strange's only tie to the world of vampires either. Doctor Strange also has a brother who became a vampire, and he has crossed paths with Chthon, who is believed to have been the one to create a few different kinds of supernatural beings, including, you guessed it, vampires. Number 8. Cyttorak. Doctor Strange actually wields the bands of Cyttorak, tying him directly to this villain. But you probably know Cyttorak better for his influence over Juggernaut, the X-Men villain who is the stepbrother of Professor Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. Cain Marko, Charles' stepbrother, was the avatar of Cyttorak for a long time, having come into contact with Cyttorak's gem and gaining immense power, also being made to act as Cyttorak's agent on Earth. Cyttorak himself is a demon and has also been worshipped as a god. He is focused on and symbolizes heavily the concept of destruction, known as the Lord of Oblivion and the Destroyer. He was at his most powerful when he was on Earth, but eventually became banished from Earth and was forced to return to his home dimension known as the Crimson Cosmos. He actually made his first full appearance in Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme issue number 44. I wonder actually, remember how we used to say that Cyclops' eyes are like a portal to a world filled with energy? That was a thing people used to say. I wonder if that was the same world that Cyttorak was from, just because like Crimson Cosmos makes me think of a world that's just pure like red energy. I don't know if that's what it's like in Cyttorak's dimension, but that's a headcanon that's in my mind now, so.
Number 7. Apocalypse. The name of the game for Apocalypse, or En Sabanur, is survival of the fittest. His powers manifested back in ancient Egypt with the powers of immortality and the ability to alter the molecular structure of his own body. Now, we unfortunately have to talk about time travel here. I'm sorry. While Apocalypse has history with Kang the Conqueror as Rama Tut, the more important time traveler that Apocalypse deals with is Nathan Summers, aka Cable. In the future world of Cable, Apocalypse had conquered the world, so in order to stop that, Nathan went back to ancient Egypt to defeat Apocalypse. Now during that fight, the techno-organic arm of Cable bonded to Apocalypse, who used it to interact with a celestial spaceship and integrate all of its technology into himself, amplifying and enhancing his existing powers, allowing allowing him to do pretty much anything. He can teleport, interface with any technology, grant himself almost any power like strength, flight, energy beams, telepathy, telekinesis, and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, it all depends on the story he's in. He's so incredibly OP that his powers wax and wane based on the story. Like in the X-Men animated TV show, he grew to like 1,000 feet tall and just used energy beams to completely vaporize the X-Men, and that could totally happen in the comics too at any point if it served the story. Usually he just sends out his horsemen to test the mutants though. The thing that makes him even more unstoppable is his ability to move his spiritual essence into new host bodies when his physical body is either worn out from his massive power or destroyed in a fight.
Number 6. Hela. Hela is the daughter of Loki, who was appointed by Odin to be the goddess of death. He would come to regret this choice, as Hela soon began several attempts to steal his and his son Thor's souls and to conquer Asgard for herself. In one of her most disturbing plots, she cursed Thor with immortal life, but a frail and decrepit body. She eventually reversed this and moved to Las Vegas, where she began to feed upon the souls of the unlucky. As the goddess of death, she can't really die, and is able to heal any injury with great speed, even being able to come back from disintegration. She has the power to kill immortal beings with a simple touch, making her a force to be reckoned with for Thor, let alone the normal human heroes he works with.
Number 5. The Fury. Many people may actually not know of the Fury, and there's a rather simple reason for that. The Fury came about in Marvel Superheroes UK, which is Marvel's attempt to branch out to British audiences and revamp Captain Britain. But it was also a way for Marvel to open up and explain the concept of the multiverse, and this all happened in the Crooked World story. This story deals with one of the most powerful reality warping mutants ever, named Mad Jim Jaspers on Earth 238. But he's not even the focus of this point. Mad Jim Jaspers became the leading political leader in England, rallying the people against superheroes, and he created what was essentially a robot called the Fury, for the sole purpose of taking down superheroes, and my lord, the Fury is good at it. In the matter of 2 years, the Fury decimated every single superpowered being on Earth 238 except for Jim Jaspers. The Fury is similar to the Sentinels we see in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie, because this robot can analyze superhuman powers or any threat and modify its own defenses and capabilities to combat it. But it can also fire extremely potent energy blasts and even restore itself after being completely destroyed. The Fury ends up completely obliterating Captain Britain, causing him to be revived. And that was all a test for Captain Britain to face the much more powerful Mad Jim Jaspers from Earth 616. Now, the universe of Earth 238 gets destroyed, but the Fury adapts to even that and develops the ability to travel across dimensional barriers to continue its mission. The only thing going against this being is that he doesn't have a ton of appearances, so it's kind of hard to judge him against other beings.
Number 4. Thanos. Thanos was born on one of Saturn's moons, Titan, and had the deviant gene, which gave him thick purple skin as well as superior strength and heightened powers. He fell in love with a woman who turned out to be Death, and dedicated his life to impressing her by destroying as many living things as possible. Thanos has conquered countless worlds in his quest to impress Death, and is responsible for unleashing unspeakable horrors upon them. For instance, when he conquers a world, it is not uncommon for him to demand a tribute of the heads of everyone from the ages of 16 to 22. This insane demand is part of his plan to fulfill a request from Death to rid the universe of any of his offspring, and rather than put in the time to find out where and who his children are, he chooses to save time by implementing this method. As he is pretty much unstoppable for anyone but the most powerful superheroes, most planets are forced to go along with his insane demands. In his most iconic moment, he came up with a plan to acquire the Infinity Gems and wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to impress his love. Unlike many other evildoers who make these elaborate plans and then fail, Thanos actually pulled this off, getting all the gems and using the Infinity Gauntlet to enact his deadly romantic gesture.
Number 3, The Void. I think one of my favorite things that Marvel's done is create the Sentry. Essentially, a Superman-like character, but like, in my opinion, way cooler. A large part of what makes him so much better is that while he is essentially a godlike superhero who inspired all the other heroes who exist, he also has a dark persona called the Void. Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan. And so, Sentry made the decision with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange to cause the entire world to forget about his existence. Now, in New Avengers, which started in 2004/2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to come back. And it totally did. In the Siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. Problem is that the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing. The Void exists as long as the Sentry exists, and the Sentry keeps on coming back to life every time he somehow gets defeated. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. Number 2. Zom. Just because Zom looks like your uncle's hairy big toe does not mean that you should underestimate him. Zom is one of the most powerful and scary extra-dimensional entities in existence, being described as worse than a dozen Umars. Umar is the sister of Dormammu, for anyone who wanted to know. Now, speaking of Dormammu, it took all of his power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain Zom with the magical chain called the Links of Living Bondage and with an object called the Crown of Blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings managed to trap Zom in a jar. Now, I know it sounds silly, I'm downplaying it. It was actually an amphora, and Zom was trapped in a quote world beyond worlds in a quote time beyond all time. That was just his origin story though. Eons into the future, in Strange Tales number 156 from 1967, Doctor Strange unleashed Zom in a fight against Umar, but that was a mistake because now Strange had no way of taking on Zom, like at all. He had to turn to the Living Tribunal, the personification of multiversal law, the representative for the One Above All, and the highest authority in the multiverse, just to banish Zom. Zom wasn't really released again, but Strange did channel Zom's power in a fight against Worldbreaker Hulk when that event happened, and using that power, he did indeed pummel the hell out of the Hulk until Strange started to lose control and pass out. Lastly, in Doctor Strange's final recent moments, he was taken down by the Hood, who held an assault on the Sanctum Sanctorum with like 50 other villains, and Strange managed to rise again, but channeling the power of Zom, which he used to take out everyone. Then, Strange left the mortal plane.
Number 1. The One Below All. So, the One Above All is the ruler of the multiverse and the creator of all life in it. Although he is the source of love and good, he also has an evil form known as the One Below All, who is the personification of hatred and destruction. The ruler of the lowest point of reality, the Below Place, it is able to manifest itself on Earth through the mutagenic form of gamma radiation. This means that when Bruce Banner was caught in the gamma bomb, he was infused with this dark entity's power. The One Below All wants to become the only remaining thing in the multiverse and to destroy everything else. As he is incapable of having his own personality without a host, it waited until Hulk's father, Brian Banner, died to merge with him and take on his personality. The leader eventually managed to absorb Brian's soul in hopes of learning more about the One Below All, but was possessed by it instead. He is a terrifying foe who can never really be killed, and who, as a dark aspect of the One Above All, is technically also the creator of everything he's trying to destroy. If you want more information on the One Below All, check out our video attempting to explain the Immortal Hulk, where he is the puppet master pulling all the strings against the Green Goliath.